It is very often the case that people who are highly sensitive, highly empathic, have a tough time feeling at home in the world and at ease with themselves. And it reminds me of the parable of the prodigal son in the Bible, which speaks of someone who leaves home only to lose himself in the world and returns to become reacquainted with his father, who then throws a feast to celebrate the return. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and today we get to talk a bit about the not feeling at home in the world, which often happens to sensitive people, and how through self-cultivation we can make a return that is sometimes on a far higher level than if we had been quote-unquote neurotypical. There is a couple of ways to interpret the parable in the Bible. The son who departs, thinking that by claiming a bit of inheritance, he is fully autonomous in the world and can spend that inheritance in any old way he wants because he has all the power that he needs, is very reminiscent of the ego's claim of autonomy. When the ego develops and when it hijacks our sense of identity, it feels like it has real power, like it has real autonomy. But that power is based on a kind of impression of free will, which can be exercised through willpower. And as we know from neuroscience, willpower is a very, very limited resource. As well, the ego doesn't have a lot of information of what's actually happening on the ground because it bases all its decisions on object relations, which are memory-based. So it inevitably runs into trouble, and as time goes by, the ego gets to find out through very painful occurrences that its willpower is not all that it's meant to be, and that it doesn't really have as much power as it thought it did. So there comes a point in which through life experience and through enough hard hits, we come to realize that we need to come to a place of surrender. So from that perspective, the parable in the Bible could indicate that the prodigal son, who claims his inheritance and goes out to the world only to find himself completely destitute, is the ego having tried its way to manhandle his way through reality, trying to force things, acquire things, use people and situations to obtain what it wants, only to realize that it can't be done, that life is too big for that and too unpredictable. So eventually returns, and the ego surrenders itself to awareness, which is the father in the parable. So that would be one interpretation. I think it could be fairly valid. And another interpretation could be to say that the prodigal son represents highly sensitive or neurodivergent type people who never really feel at home, who feel like they have been left out in the cold somehow, that you have never really felt fully at home in the world and at ease with yourself. That reminds me of a song from Tracy Chapman, who says, the place where all my journeys end, right? So to finally have arrived. And the neurodivergent, the empathic person hardly ever gets to feel that. So that the prodigal son could represent a neurodivergent person, whilst the other son in the parable, the one who sticks by the father throughout all these years taking responsibility, is the neurotypical person, the one that is a pillar of society, holds a job, has a family, and makes sure that society runs, essentially, right? And the reason I suspect that that meaning could be part of it is because when the prodigal son returns, the father throws a feast, and the other son is jealous of this. He says, listen, I've stuck by you all this time. How come I don't get celebrated for doing that? And the father says, you stuck through thick and thin all this time. You're the responsible one. And I know I can count on you, but your brother was lost and now he's found. And that's a reason for a major, major celebration. And it goes back to the idea that neurodivergent people have a higher potential for reaching higher states of self-cultivation and self-realization. And I say potential very carefully because it's no guarantee. They might be too unstable to go higher, right? There's a lot of factors need to come into play. But there is one factor that is definitely there, and it's the factor of just simply not feeling at home, and the effort that this evokes in highly empathic people. The willingness, the desire, the grit, the determination to go the extra mile to finally arrive at something that feels like home for us. This is not a new idea. In Buddhism, it was known that the mud of suffering, or the manure of suffering, is what creates the lotus of the Buddha. Without suffering, there is no Buddha. And perhaps there is not enough of it in the neurotypical person to have to go as far as you need to go in the path of self-cultivation. And then comes the part about the feast, which is the great celebration of finally having arrived, which is quite a thing, right? So the non-dual perception is so phenomenal, is so spectacular. The pristine sight of what used to be the world, it is now an integral part of yourself. It's almost like Mother Nature giving you a motherly embrace that you have been longing for your entire life. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I don't know if neurotypical people ever get to feel that, but in conversation, it never really comes up. And it's so amazing, I can only conclude that they don't get to experience that, right? That's just my personal take. I could be, as usual, very wrong about that. And I wish that for everybody, actually. I just don't think it's in the cards for many people who just have it good enough. So to quote another song, there's the song Faithfully from Journey, in which the song describes the life of artists on the road, on tour, essentially, and how every time they come back to their spouses at home, they get, quote unquote, the joy of rediscovering them, right? Which is not the same as just being at home with them day in and day out. They go on tour, and when they come back, there's this joy of rediscovery that takes place, which is hardly describable for someone who is, simply with their spouse 24/7 throughout decades of their lives. So this is a video about recognizing that for the neurodivergent and the highly empathic person, not feeling at home seems to be an integral part of life experience, and that is what creates the fuel for going on to a self-realization journey. And if done right, if done with enough determination and intelligence and sincerity, then the celebration of being welcomed back as a prodigal son is in the cards for us. And I can attest to that through whatever experience of self-realization I've reached for myself. And it's of course always an invitation for viewers to embark on that process. I'm very curious about your take on this one, so do share it in the comment section. And as usual, if you think that these videos are helpful to others, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes the channel far more visible. And I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. Until then, cheerio and bye-bye.